Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Stab the Dragon Productions. It is Tuesday, May the 3rd, 2022. Here with a special edition. I occasionally do commentary on social issues, and the social issue of the day, the cultural issue of the day, is the leak from the Supreme Court that says justices are considering a case that could overturn Roe v. Wade, and that 5 of the 9 justices are in support of doing just that. In fact, the Chief Justice Roberts has issued a statement saying that they are going to that this is a true story, that they are considering this, but that the decision is not final, and that they're going to start. There's a marshal of the court. He's going to get the marshal of the court to start an investigation to see how this leak occurred. Today on WBAP radio here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, I heard a lawyer who used to be a clerk at the Supreme Court detail the steps that they take to make sure leaks don't happen. And the biggest step is a reliance on the integrity of the justices and the clerks and the staff. That they have such a respect for the Supreme Court, such a respect for the Constitution, that nobody would do this kind of a leak. And then there are several procedures internally to keep information from being leaked, such as in an internal communication system that does not rely on the internet, so it can't be hacked from outside. I thought that was fascinating. Maybe that's something our defense industry could use. And then there's they can't take these kinds of briefs home with them. Everything stays in the office. And then there's actually a burn box where if they are done with a hard copy of something, they will put it in this box, and it is double shredded, vertically and horizontally, and then burned, and then the ashes mixed with water or something. I mean, it was a remarkable process of secrecy and containment, and making sure nothing was to be leaked. So when you look at that and then you say, well, how did this get leaked? Well, the obvious flaw in the system is human beings who are sinners who would breach their integrity and breach the integrity of the court in order to do this. Well, I heard my Senator Ted Cruz mention that this was a leftist clerk. I wouldn't be. I would say that's a probability, but not necessarily. I mean, that might be jumping the gun. I think we should wait for the investigation to see who. I mean, yeah, you could, through conjecture and analysis, you could think, well, it's probably a leftist clerk. I don't know what a right-leaning clerk would gain by this, but let's look at what the left would possibly gain from this move. The number one gain, I think, is it motivates their base, the base of the leftist liberals, prior to an election, because right now Democrats are in the doldrums. Their president is senile. He's made all kinds of horrific decisions that have impacted the economy and our safety and security in a negative way. Okay, so the price of diesel is sky high, the price of gasoline is sky high. You combine that, fuel, the price of fuel affects farming and agriculture, everything from the farmers filling up their tractors to fertilizer, which is a petroleum-based product, to the truckers who carry stuff from the farms to the warehouses, to the stores. So the price of food is skyrocketing. The monetary and fiscal policies of this Democrat government have produced inflation. I mean, the printing presses are running triple overtime. Borrowing is all of these things are, when you dump free money in the economy, it causes inflation. You expand the amount of money very rapidly in an economy, and the result is money becomes worth less, and so that's inflation, right? Who does inflation help? It helps the government. It helps debtors. Who's the biggest debtor? The government. So this is all of this is Democrat policies. You can look at defense policies from the hasty evacuation and surrender of Afghanistan. You can look at the armed forces budget, which is really a decline in terms of real dollars in the face of war in Europe, potential war in the Far East. So the Democrat policies right now and their leadership with President Biden and Vice President Harris are just in the doldrums. And so when you have a demoralized political base, you've got to gin up the vote somehow. And so here we are. This gets leaked. Now it's going to come out eventually anyway. I mean, I guess this case is going to be announced and decided within a month. And so it was going to be released anyway. But so I'm not sure who gains what from releasing it early other than this. And this is, boy, this is dark stuff. If the decision has not been finally made, and that's what Chief Justice Roberts said today, then might there not possibly be an attack on one of the 5 justices or their families that would preclude this vote, that would swing the vote in another direction? And it doesn't have to be a physical attack, although that's a possibility. I don't put anything beneath where the left is today. The left is violent. Just look at all the George Floyd riots, the violence that was there. And you can go back to previous riots, go back years. The left is inherently violence prone. And so just look at who could possibly benefit from something like this. Boy, that's pretty dark if somebody attacks one of these justices. But it might give President Biden the opportunity to try to pack the court like FDR tried. That way, you could hurriedly get a new justice in before the November elections, or perhaps 2 or 3 justices, really pack the court, raise it up to 11 or raise it up to 13, something like that, and just force that through the Senate. I don't know if even all the Democrat senators would go for that. I don't think Manchin would go for that, or the senator from Arizona. So I don't know who's going to benefit from leaking this when they did, but there are a couple of dark possibilities there. So how does this affect, or how does this show perhaps what's going on in evangelicalism, the church, conservative Christian movement? Because I'm coming at this, trying to come from this from a Christian perspective. I'm a Baptist. I've paid attention to evangelicalism through the years. And what I noticed 6 years ago, maybe I guess 7 years ago now, is that in the campaign for the 2016 election, right, the campaign leading up to that, when Trump was running, is I started seeing in the Gospel Coalition, which I used to read them all the time. I was very encouraged by the Gospel Coalition. I was very encouraged by somebody like David French. And what I saw was there was this movement within the Gospel Coalition and within some of the neocons and the outer, political conservative movement as well, to really hate Trump, to not support Trump at all. Well, I got to tell you that in that primary election, I voted for Ted Cruz. I was not a huge Trump fan at all. I considered all the candidates carefully. And Trump was interesting, but he's also a little bit on the disgusting side to me. I mean, just his, I don't want to get all into that, but there was things about Trump I didn't like. Well, Trump won the primary, of course, and then it was Trump versus Hillary. Well, that's a no contest. I was going to support Trump, and I started studying Trump a little bit more, and I saw more things that I liked, but there's still some things I didn't like. But in the end, Trump did the upset, despite everything the Gospel Coalition could do. It seemed to me like there was this flavor, and I don't have any hard evidence right in front of me that I'm not going to quote any articles, but it just seemed to me that there was a tenor within the Gospel Coalition that was anti-Trump, and that maintained itself throughout the 4 years of his presidency. And then leading up to the 2020 election, that was even enhanced more. There was a very subtle shift within the Gospel Coalition and related evangelicals to say, well, hey, it's not a problem, if you're going to vote Democrat. It's not a problem if we shouldn't be all that political in the church. You shouldn't be supporting just one political party in the church. Well, the subtle message there is, hey, we don't like Trump, and so it's okay if you vote for Biden. Well, Trump appointed 3 conservative justices to the Supreme Court. Those 3, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett, are supposedly 3 of the 5 that are supporting overturning Roe. And so now the Gospel Coalition is in this situation of, hey, the guy we were against, his Supreme Court appointees may be about ready to overturn Roe v. Wade. And so that's kind of an amazing thing. Well, then there's the issue of, you hear this a lot in conservative church circles that, hey, you don't want to make politics your God. And so politics really don't belong in the pulpit. And, if we paid more attention to the gospel and less attention to politics, we'd be better off. Things like that. Well, now, I get that. I understand, on the surface what's being said. But there's an undertone to that message that I have a problem with, I think. In that the gospel should affect every area of life. Okay? Apply God's word to every area of life. And that includes political, cultural issues. And as a part of discipleship within the church, the pastors, the teachers in the church should be educating and teaching and motivating the membership, those who come there to worship, to do the gospel thing in relation to the current political situation of the day, the issues of the day. And I think in a lot of issues, maybe even most issues, there is a proper biblical response and there's an improper response. There are a few issues where it's going to be shades of gray, where, tomato, and a Christian could go either way with. But I think on the issue of abortion versus the pro-life position, I think that's cut and dried. If you're a follower of Jesus Christ, you should be supporting the pro-life position. The same thing with same-sex marriage. If you're a believer, there's no gray zone there. You should be supporting the biblical view of heterosexual lifelong marriage. And so that those things are cut and dry. Now, you get on some more foggy terrain if you start talking about, say, the right to own and possess firearms. Okay, I think I can make a good, sound biblical case that says people ought to be able to arm themselves against bad guys. Okay, and the government should not take away that right. I think you can make a strong biblical case for that, but I can kind of see, some people saying, no, we should be pacifists. Well, I don't agree with that, but I'm willing to at least let them argue their position without lambasting it too hardly. I think they're wrong. The border issue, again, I think the Bible teaches that nations are a good thing, that borders and boundaries are a good thing, that following law is a good thing. And so if you have lawlessness on the border, which is what we currently have, that should be preached against. and we should preach for a process of allowing people into our country in a legal, organized, safe manner. And that's not what we've got today. So, political issues within the church are difficult. They're tricky, but I think we ignore those to our own peril. And furthermore, as an act of discipleship, we fail if we do not present a biblical methodology to these cultural issues. So I think that by and large, over the last 30, 40, 50 years, the conservative churches have successfully argued the pro-life position. But there are some now within evangelicalism for the last several years who have waffled on that because they didn't like Trump, they didn't like the Republican Party. And so, those guys who waffled on it, now they're eating crow maybe. Is the Gospel Coalition going to come out and apologize? Hey, look, we trashed Trump and we kind of sabotaged his candidacy and the election, and we're sorry. That's not going to happen. No, absolutely not. But what can we expect? What's going to happen next? I've already given a couple of dark scenarios of violence against the Supreme Court justices or their family, Biden packing the court. I think another thing that you can look forward to is civil disturbances, riots. Maybe not quite as bad as the George Floyd riots of 2020, but approaching that level. Okay, I think you're going to look at Antifa being mobilized again. You're going to look at, if you remember when Donald Trump was inaugurated, all the crazy women with the pink hats on their head that represented female genitalia, right? I think you'll see that again in mass, just hordes of them. So the Karen factor is going to be high. I think you're going to see a lot of these protests and they'll turn violent. The news media and Hollywood, of course, they're all going to be full tilt crazy on this. So it's going to be nonstop from now until the elections in November. And if the Republicans have just a runaway election there, then the riots and things will get worse. So we are a divided country right now. We are divided over foundational, fundamental issues where there's no compromise room. There's no room for compromise. Pro-life or pro-abortion. Okay, there's not much in between room there. I mean, there's just not. And so that's a huge divide. Same-sex marriage, similarly, pro-homosexual, pro-same-sex marriage, or pro-heterosexual family, as God portrays in the scriptures, as God commands. There's not room for compromise there. Wide open border or law and order at the border. There's not much room for compromise there. So increasingly, our country is deeply divided. I think we are more divided today than America was in the 1850s leading up to the Civil War. Because it's worse today in that it's not even so much of a geographical division, although there's an element of that in that the vast middle of the country tends to be more conservative and the left coast and right coast tend to be more liberal, and your big cities tend to be more liberal. But so there's a little element of geography, but it's nowhere near as clear as it was in 1860 in Lincoln's election. So I really think we're entering into a very dark, divided time, and it would certainly be worth your while to pray for the Supreme Court and their families. It would be worth your while to pray for the Senate and pray for the president to either see the light or be removed. I think you can look at the health situation with President Biden, and man, I don't think he's healthy enough to serve. I just don't think he's mentally fit to serve. And so, he needs to be legally removed from office. Of course, I know that would put Vice President Harris in there. And so who knows what that would be like. Well, this is it for Stab the Dragon today, Tuesday, the 3rd of May, 2022. Out here.